Can Russia be great again? Conclusion is proposed. Russia cannot be great in the future. It cannot rise again. In the next technological revolution and the ensuing military revolution, Russia will be eliminated. It will no longer be a world power. The benefits derived from its previous complacent international status will gradually diminish. Moreover, if Russia does not concede its interests, Eastern countries may very likely sever ties with Russia. This would turn Russia into an international pariah. When the Soviet Union abandoned the ideology of the global proletariat to compete with the United States on a national level, Russia was destined to decline. Many believe that Russia has the largest territory in the world. It has the second largest armed forces. It is the only major power that can be self-sufficient. Its natural resources rank first in the world. This should guarantee Russia a stable position in a multipolar world, even in the current conflict. Despite Western sanctions, Russia's GDP has returned to the world's top 5. But the problem is, Russia's technology and industrial layout remain stuck in the Cold War era. The world is developing, while Russia is relying on the past since the Soviet collapse. The world is undergoing transformation. One prominent feature is the highly energy-intensive information industry. Data centers and 5G stations in China consume the equivalent of 2 or 3 Three Gorges Dams power output annually. In the booming AI sector, the energy consumption is staggering. One training session can consume hundreds of millions of kilowatt-hours. After the Soviet collapse, Russia's power generation has significantly declined. It is serious. Power generation dropped from 1,081,000 kilowatt-hours in 1990 to a low of 821,000 kilowatt-hours in 1998. A decrease of nearly 1/4. Last year, Russia generated only 1,141,000 kilowatt-hours, a 30-year growth of less than 10%. In comparison, in 2000, China's power generation was 1,310,000 kilowatt-hours. By 2022, it reached 8.4 trillion kilowatt-hours, a more than 6-fold increase in 22 years. Currently, its power generation surpasses Russia's, even exceeding that of the United States by double. Thus, the technological revolution driven by AI is most likely to occur in China. With Russia's current industrial foundation, it cannot propel itself towards the next technological revolution. Just like Windows XP, in future battles, there will be drones and robots on the ground, and 6th-generation fighters and early warning aircraft in the sky. Russia will still rely on outdated tanks, armored vehicles, and antenna packages. The outcome of war is evident. The second reason is that Russia's historical culture is out of sync with the world. Russian history is marked by continuous colonial expansion. Modern Russia's origins trace back over 1,000 years to the Kievan Rus. From Kievan Rus to the Principality of Moscow. From the Grand Duchy of Moscow to Ivan the Terrible. From Peter the Great to Alexander II. Russians took 1,000 years to expand from a small nation of tens of thousands of square kilometers to a vast empire across 3 continents. This transformation from principality to empire, and from feudalism to capitalism, was historic. This process was accompanied by countless wars and conspiracies, bloodshed and slaughter. This historical backdrop will always accompany territorial disputes and border conflicts throughout Russia's existence. It is difficult to create a favorable geopolitical environment for its development. With such intentions, it must lead to its downfall. Moreover, Russia has long been the #1 adversary of Western countries. NATO exists primarily to contain Russia. Various means must be employed to restrict Russia's development. This is nearly a global consensus, excluding Russia. The world is divided. There are various ethnic differences, color differences, and belief differences. Sometimes these can become the root of conflict. Yet, the world is also partially integrated. In the West, there is the Anglo-Saxon civilization circle. East Asia has the Confucian civilization circle. The Middle East has the Islamic civilization circle. Because of shared culture, ethnicity, and faith, people have formed a cognitive community. This is commonly known as solidarity. It is humanity's most powerful weapon in survival competition over millennia. However, Russia is out of sync with the world. It is primarily located in Asia. Yet it identifies as a European nation. It is a Caucasian nation, but is often viewed as barbaric by the West. It claims to be the Third Rome, but few believe it, as it stands as an orphan in the realm of human civilization. It struggles for acceptance and recognition from the mainstream world. For example, Russia has repeatedly tried to join NATO. But the only memory people have is of Yeltsin awkwardly laughing like a clown. If Russia hadn't lost most of the Soviet legacy, it would likely have been dismantled long ago, despite having the second largest nuclear arsenal. The third reason is that Russia's economy has lost the ability to reform. As mentioned, Russia's industrial foundation cannot support the next technological revolution. Can Russia reform? Unfortunately, it truly cannot. After the Soviet collapse, Russia inherited the absurd economic system of the Soviet Union. Russia's military industry, heavy industry, chemical industry, and aerospace industry remain advanced, even in a leading position in the world. However, Soviet light industry and agriculture lag behind. Most daily consumer goods need to be imported. Domestic consumption is weak. Russia's finances rely heavily on selling natural gas, selling resources, and selling arms to maintain that 20% of the world's arms are from Russia. They sell them. Will Russia not engage in economic reform? Can they not develop light industry, which is vital for people's livelihoods? Every dynasty's transition is the downfall of the old nobility and the rise of the new. However, the Soviet Union and Russia are not the old nobility of the Soviet Union, but also the new nobility of Russia, which are the oligarchs. They were key participants in the dissolution of the Soviet Union. They continue to profit from the dissolution of the Soviet Union and control Russia's economy. Putin did not come to power by defeating all the oligarchs. Instead, Russia allowed Putin to take power, which was a compromise by the oligarchs. In this situation, internal political and economic reforms in Russia are nearly impossible. One cannot expect vested interests to cut their own throats. Moreover, the situation is quite abstract. Previously, it was said he needed 20 years to deliver a miraculous Russia. In fact, he was given those 20 years. But now NATO has repeatedly expanded eastward, militarily, relying on archaeological studies of Soviet battlefields. He cannot manage Ukraine's economy. He can only compare to Guangdong's AI technology revolution. However, Russia's industrial base cannot support such an upgrade. Once a stronghold, it has now become a gas station for major countries. Even with opportunities, it struggles. The last reason is that the East no longer holds goodwill toward Russia. Previously, there was hope for cooperation. But Russia first seized Central European goods for 6 months, then caused issues with the bridge repairs. As long as the old bridge doesn't function, the outlet cannot be used. They have blocked it for 27 years. Now, a complete public-private division has been achieved. Russia must concede interests for assistance. Previously, at the UN, he confronted the US representative. But if military supplies were provided to Russia, would the situation on the Russia-Ukraine battlefield still be the same? This appears to be a retort. But the US is actually reminding Russia of its vulnerabilities. Look at what your Eastern uncle has that you desperately need. Trade what you have for it. Whether it's money, resources, or territory, anything will do. Currently, they are the only major country maintaining normal trade with Russia. If they push us slightly, the Russian economy will collapse. In 2024, Russian exports are projected at $278 billion. Over 100 billion of which are sold to us. Almost half. Imports mainly rely on us. In 2024, Russia's trade surplus is $150 billion. Imports are just over $200 billion. Our exports to Russia are $115 billion. By comparing these figures, it is clear that without the East, Russia could hardly buy anything. To be honest, they must not forget the neighbor that once occupied over 150,000 square kilometers of their land. They must also remember the millions of troops stationed at the northern border, forcing them to refrain from relocating industrial bases inland. They must not forget the days spent digging air raid shelters and stockpiling food against nuclear threats. So, for the East, buying more resources from Russia now is a way to sustain itself, while bearing the pressure from the US. In Central Asia and the Far East, concessions have been made. This is already the maximum support. Currently, Russia's industrial technology is locked down. In the late Cold War, the economy is controlled by oligarchs, making economic transformation difficult. On the international stage, it resembles a larger North Korea. The most important allies and trade partners no longer trust it. A sinking ship. No one will bind themselves to it. Russia is experiencing an irreversible chronic decline. Stay tuned for the complexities of the small tavern strategy.